Howling with the Wolf. We are live. Week 5. Week 5. We are live. Thank you guys for joining once again. It's been a fun NFL season, fun quarter poll, if that's what you call it at this point. A lot to talk about. Quite a bit of topics. We got quite a bit of questions coming into here beforehand, and we're going to have some fun today. I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes. We want to talk about the Dolphins situation with Jordan Phillips, what's going on there. I want to talk about Earl Thomas and his situation. We all saw what happened with him getting injured, throwing the middle finger to the Seahawks. And I want to talk about Le'Veon Bell's situation, him coming back, deciding that he's going to return to the Steelers this week. A lot of good topics. I have about 9 questions that I selected from people that sent them in. I want to go ahead and get to those. And then, as always, if you guys want to continue to ask questions on my poll, fire away, and we'll be able to get those going on, and we'll be able to have some fun on this segment. So I have a couple fun segments I want to do, funniest moments of the week, the craziest thing I saw, and I'm going to break down the Dolphins-Patriots game and give you some predictions at the end. So let's ride, and let's have some fun on this episode. First thing first, I want to go ahead and jump to a couple of the questions some people had sent in beforehand to this segment. You know, as always, you guys can send me via Twitter or Facebook. I got some questions from Twitter and Facebook that I'll go ahead and answer. And if you guys get that, I'll go ahead and answer some of you guys from the jump. So in the future, just send me questions in and I'll answer from the jump. Otherwise, you can do it and I'll knock them out at the end. So one question I got from Yavanye. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. It says, since covering the Miami Dolphins, which player has caught your attention the most? And that's a good question. I think that the one player I'd say probably has caught my attention the most is Robert Quinn. Defensive end that came from the Rams. He has consistently flashed nearly every day throughout games and in practices. The sack numbers aren't there, but he has played extremely well. And I think that he and Cam Wake make one of the better edge rush duos in the NFL. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick has probably been my second choice in there as a guy who's consistently flashed. And then probably third, Albert Wilson, the guy who's a playmaker, has consistently made plays since I've been here. And I think that he's a guy who I've seen from the jump. So those would probably be my 3 guys that have caught my eye. I have another question from Zach Zulo that said, should the fact that the players don't seem to be getting the message with the Miami Dolphins coaching staff be considered a coaching staff problem? I don't know if we can say as far as this point that they're not getting the message. I think this last week, even Adam Gase mentioned they got kicked in the you-know-what. They got smacked. They got smacked all around. But otherwise, we saw a team that was very good in this culture that seemed like they fit and knew what they were doing. So I think it's a little too early to say that they have a coaching staff problem. I think that, the Jordan Phillips release, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this episode, was eye-opening. But I think that it's too early to say that, hey, they're losing grip on anything. I think the coaching staff has created a culture that knows that they're playing above their talent level, and we saw that in the first 3 weeks of the season, and I think we'll see some of that even if they struggle over the next couple of weeks. I'll answer one more, we'll head into a couple topics, and then I'll head back into this. So one other question, let's see what we're going to go with. We're going to go with, I told this guy, Minkah Fitzgoatrick. Fun name there, play on Minkah Fitzpatrick name. Asked about Miami's first down plays. He said, in your opinion, why are Miami's first down plays so, for lack of a better term, bad? I actually asked Dow Loggins about this earlier today at his press conference, the Dolphins offensive coordinator, and he basically said that they have specific first down plays and specific third down plays, and they self-scout every week, including this week, and they determine if they're going to swap some of those plays, if they're going to decide, hey, let's make some of our third down plays first down plays. And as we've seen over the last few weeks, they haven't been good on first down, second down, or third downs, particularly last week. So I think we're seeing a lot of situations where their first down plays are running into situations where they're not able to get off press coverage. Their offensive line is not being able to protect the way that they want them to protect. And obviously they're not running the football. So there's nothing they can hang their hat on and say, hey, this is our bread and butter on that play. How you doing, Hugo? This is their bread and butter for the play. So that creates a lot of issues for your team. I think on first down, that's where they have to be able to establish that run game early. And if those holes aren't open, as they haven't been in recent weeks, we got to find ways to manufacture the ball to Kenyon Drake, to Frank Gore. Those are your playmakers. Kenyon Drake might be the most explosive playmaker on this team. I wrote that on an article on ESPN.com this week. Where is Kenyon Drake? He's been on a milk carton over the last couple of weeks and not getting the touches. 8 touches for 6 yards over the last 2 weeks. That's ridiculous for a guy like Kenyon Drake. So I think that we need to see more of that going forward. So those are 3 Dolphins questions. We'll hop back into more as the episode gets on. But I want to jump quickly to a few topics in the NFL overall. So whether you're a Dolphins fan, whether you're a Titans fan following me from Nashville, or you're just a fan of the NFL as a whole, I want to appease to what's going on across the league. So the best thing that I've saw this week is Patrick Mahomes, as I like to call him, Patrick Mahomes. With the froggish voice, as Andy Reid refers to it, he is a baller. He's a guy who played against the Denver Broncos this past week on Monday Night Football, and he balled out. I was really impressed with what I saw from him. Guy from Texas Tech, who you're not really sure what you're going to get from that scheme. Really high spread system, a lot of passes thrown. You're not really sure how those guys can convert into the NFL, and that's probably a reason why he fell in the draft. But Patrick Mahomes looks like he's going to be a really, really good NFL player, a future MVP. And he's a guy who has already shown to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL thus far this season. So he's probably one of the best surprises of this year. The Kansas City Chiefs are 4-0. They look like one of the 2 best teams in this league, along with the LA Rams. And I'm really excited to see what they do. I know the LA Rams and Kansas City Chiefs play in a few weeks, and that might end up being the game of the season so far. If they end up playing as well as they have so far throughout the season. So really impressed with Patrick Mahomes. I want to talk about another topic, and then we'll go ahead and hop back into a few questions that were already sent in before the show. I want to talk about Le'Veon Bell's situation with the Steelers. Le'Veon Bell decided that, hey, Week 6, Week 7, I'm going to come back and play back in this game. I decided I'm going to come back to the Steelers. He already made the decision. He says he's going to come back in the bye week. I'm interested to see if the Steelers decide that, hey, can we kiss and make up, or do they got to trade a guy like Le'Veon Bell? There was a lot of guys in that offensive line room that said a lot of things, a lot of emotional things against Le'Veon Bell that created a lot of friction, a lot of facile here and there. So I'm intrigued to see just exactly how do they make up, with a situation where, Le'Veon Bell is going to come in and be, again, one of their stars, and they know that he can play. There has been some talk that, he feels like he can get a long-term extension. My colleague Jeremy Fowler talked to him, and he said that he feels like his long-term view could be in Pittsburgh. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I think that we oftentimes take the side of team side, whether it's media, whether it's fans, but players, they have their right, their ability to sort of decide that, hey, I'm going to do what's right for me, my family, my financial situation. I actually talked to TJ McDonald this week about the CBA and a potential lockout in 2021, and I'm like, hey man, what's going on? What do you guys have talks about this? And he's like, yeah, all the time. We have talks all the time about getting our money together, educating ourselves about this situation, and preparing ourselves for 3 years if we decide that we want a better union, we want a union like the NBA, and we're going to sit out. We're going to end up boycotting and end up having a lockout like they had at one point about 7-8 years ago until they fix what is going on. So I think that Le'Veon Bell situation, Earl Thomas situation, which I'll talk about a little later, also is a sign that NFL players are appreciating their value. And when you appreciate your value as an NFL player, then you're not going to allow the quote-unquote shield or the quote-unquote team view of things to influence how you go about your decision-making. You're seeing that with Le'Veon Bell. You're seeing that with how disdained Earl Thomas is when he got injured. So I think I want to see more players, realizing their power. I want to see more players being vocal, and those are the personalities that are really going to send this league to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to a few more questions that I got earlier coming into this episode. And as always, you guys can shoot me questions on this channel over here. And as you do, I'll try to answer some of those probably towards the end of the segment. I see you, Anthony Norman, with your question on the Dolphins or Titans. I know that we saw earlier this season, they played week 1 and the Dolphins won. But I think the Titans have been really, really impressive over the last couple of weeks. And I like what I see from that team. I'll discuss them a little bit later into the show. How you doing, Spyros? All the way from Greece. I'd love to visit Greece at some point. That's cool. Thanks for tuning in to me all the way from Greece. So we'll go to a few more questions, like I said, that people sent in before. And I'll give my take on these things, and then I'll hop back on a few more topics I want to discuss, and I'll discuss some fun moments that I saw around the league, and then we'll break down some Dolphins Patriots. So let's see. I got a message from Noah Lopez, who asked, how will Miami's offense and defense overcome the lack of depth in the trenches? Miami has been hit hard by the injury bug. Hard. 2 lost starting offensive linemen so far this season, and Josh Sitton and Daniel Kilgore. I talked to Ryan Tannehill earlier this week about how you can overcome those as a quarterback, and he was pretty frank. He said, hey, man, these are difficult, particularly losing a starting center. That relationship between a quarterback and a starting center is so important. And if you lose that, then it's going to take a while for that chemistry to come back. So I'm intrigued to see how Travis Swanson responds. They talked him up a bit. It seems like they're going to stay in-house with all their upgrades, whether on the offensive or the defensive line. They called up Cameron Malvo, guy that's a University of Houston grad, go Cougs, and he's going to play on the defensive end. But his entry is more to give Cam Wake a chance, a breather, because Cam Wake is banged up with a knee injury. They may call up another defensive tackle this week, but they're going to roll with their guys, for better or for worse. And the offensive line is going to have quite a matchup with Geno Atkins this week. Sam Thiessen is asking about Kenyon Drake's presence. How do the Dolphins regain Kenyon Drake's presence while the offensive line continues to be riddled with injuries? Very good question, Sam. I actually wrote about this earlier this week, like I mentioned earlier in this video. My colleague Mike Triplett, who does our NFL Nation fantasy football fallout, is actually going to write something about this for the weekend. Kenyon Drake has been one of the more puzzling things about the Dolphins this season. It's been one of the more puzzling things about NFL fantasy football. If you're a fantasy football owner, I am. I got 2 teams, one doing really well, one, we won't talk about it. But Kenyon Drake has been puzzling because he was supposed to be the lead explosive back for this offense. He's one of their stars, or the closest thing they have to stars, and for some reason it just hasn't got going. And I'll tell you, there's 3 reasons why. One, Adam Gase really, really loves Frank Gore, and he's going to continue to share time with Frank Gore, whether things are going well or whether things are not going well. So if you think that Kenyon Drake is going to be the all-encompassing 3-down back, that's not going to happen this year. Adam Gase has already explained that Frank Gore provides a lot for this offense on the field as well, and he has played well. So I think you're going to see a lot more of Frank Gore. Number 2, there's no holes. There's no holes. You can't see anything. Kenyon Drake is running into brick walls because there's nothing there for him to go into. The offensive line has struggled immensely with injuries, and I think that when you look at where this unit is going forward, there's no safety valve. There's no light bulb coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to bring the help. There's no help coming. These are going to be the offensive line for better or for worse. So it's on Adam Gase. It's on Dow Loggins. And I talked to both of them today about this, to manufacture touches for Kenyon Drake. You got to find ways to get playmakers the ball. Adam Gase has been really strong with this, with his receivers, with Albert Wilson, with Jakeem Grant, with Danny Amendola, with Kenny Stills. You got to be just as good with your running back, particularly a guy like Kenyon Drake. He cannot have 8 touches for 6 yards over 2 games. Not acceptable. So they got to continue to find ways to get Kenyon Drake the ball, and I think we'll see that some this week. For fantasy football owners, don't panic quite yet. I think that he's going to turn it around, whether this week or going forward. But like I said, Kenyon Drake's, that's probably one of the more puzzling things that I've seen this season. I have a question for Joseph. I see you in the chat right here. I actually have a question from Little Redwood that's similar to yours, but I'll come back to yours a little later. I'm going to answer Little Redwood, and then we're going to move on a little bit to a different topic. Little Redwood saying, do you think the Dolphins should trade for either offensive line depth or defensive line depth? With all the rumors surrounding Parker, I feel like they need to commit one way or the other because every game he's out there loses experience and trade value. Okay, so DeVante Parker is going to be the topic here, and Joseph, you're asking about DeVante Parker as well with your weapons down the field. I'm actually probably going to write a story about DeVante Parker that's going to come out on Saturday, so look out for that on ESPN.com. DeVante Parker has had a really odd and frustrating tenure in Miami. This is a guy who was a 2015 first-round pick, a guy out of Louisville, with big 6'3", 220-pound player, has plenty of talent. Has the ability to be a number one receiver, but he hasn't shown it. It's all been potential, and this week has been one of the more puzzling situations that I've encountered. Adam Gase was talking about how weird it was that last week DeVante Parker ended up feeling like he was healthy all week. He got hurt on Thursday. He hurt his quad, didn't tell anybody on the team, and he couldn't go Friday during practice, and they had to have him as a surprise scratch. Ryan Tannehill talked about how much of a wrench that threw into your offense. And when you're a player, a key player, a starter on this team, for you to go ghost on somebody, for you to not explain what's going on with your injury situation, when you're already a guy who has had injury situations in the past that have led you to have sort of a durability question mark, I think that that's very puzzling to me. I don't know where DeVante Parker's mindset is at. If I can talk to him in the locker room tomorrow, I will ask him that because I know there's a lot of people in Dolphins Nation that are down on DeVante Parker, and he's a really talented kid, but you need to be able to get more out of him as a receiver. He has a very different, very unique skill set that can really help this offense, but for some reason he's just not being able to get it together. So I think that's something that's something to watch. I do believe, and to answer Joseph your question, I do believe that we could be looking at the final year of DeVante Parker in Miami. And I think that's something where if you're a Dolphins fan, I know a lot of people are saying, hey, get DeVante Parker out of here. But he's a guy who you invested a lot of resources in. And I think that you want to be able to get all of the investment you can out of DeVante Parker. And entering his fourth year, they agreed to sign his fifth-year contract, but he can be cut easily after this year. So I think that that's going to be one thing to watch as we go through the rest of the season. Does DeVante Parker get more reps? Does he start getting healthy? Does he start contributing for this offense? Because this team can honestly use them. Honestly, use DeVante Parker. I think that a lot of people look at the playmakers they have in Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant and Kenny Stills, but DeVante Parker provides a guy who can beat press coverage, and that's something the Dolphins have really struggled at over the last couple of weeks, particularly last week against the Patriots. They've struggled to get off of press coverage, and when you have a 6'3" receiver, somebody who's different from the skill sets of your 5'11" Albert Wilson, of your 5'9", Albert Wilson, your 5'11" Danny Amendola, your 5'7" Jakeem Grant. If you have somebody like that, it creates you being somebody that defenses can't pin. And I think over the last week really, the New England Patriots decided that, hey, this is a speed receiving core. If we get physical with them on the line, if we press them, then they're not going to be able to respond. And once you get a guy like DeVante Parker out there, that changes the dynamic. So I know that he's losing a lot of trust on the Dolphins coaching staff because some of these injuries, some of these things keep bubbling up. But I think if the Dolphins get him back, he can impact this team. The frustrating part is that I don't think they can trust that, hey, we're going to be able to have him and game plan around him for a given week. For this given week, he's been a limited participant on Wednesday and Thursday. And as of Thursday, as I record this video, it's leaning like he's not going to play on Sunday for Week 5. He's only played in one game thus far this season. And if he misses this week, it would be missing his fourth game. So that's something that's got to be frustrating for Chris Greer, for Mike Tannenbaum, guys who invested draft pick first round draft pick and a guy who's really been not anything that they expected him to be. So I'll talk a little bit more about that on my .com story on Saturday. Make sure to read that. But I think DeVante Parker is a very sore spot for a lot of Dolphins fans, and he's losing some trust in that in the Dolphins with the Dolphins coaching staff. So I'll go quickly away from the Dolphins and talk about a couple more topics. I'm going to talk about Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas' situation was really sad to me because I feel like that he was a guy who was very vocal on what he wanted, and a lot of times us in the media, fans as a whole, like I mentioned before, see the team side of views and they see, hey, this guy's making $8 or $9 million. Why is he holding out? Why won't he just play football? He's getting paid more than I get paid. And yeah, as a logical human being, as me and you who don't make anywhere near that, that may make sense. But for him, he's thinking his long-term growth. He's a 30-year-old safety. He knows if he gets injured at any point in situation, it's going to change his career earnings. There's a potential to make money for the rest of his career, and he knows that he's a all-pro player who has a lot of value. So he decided that, hey, I'm going to hold out. I'm going to hold tight until the team gives me my value. Ultimately, the team didn't budge, and he ended up returning, and now he breaks his leg on TV, and you see him flipping off the bird to the Seahawks because he's basically saying, hey, this is what This is what I knew was going to happen. This is why I'm holding out. So that probably officially ends the Legion of Boom. The Seahawks secondary that was so heralded for so long, that's probably the official end of that. But I think that, Earl Thomas, this shouldn't end his career. And I hope that we see a more productive Earl Thomas in the future, a guy who can really bounce back from this. I think that his situation is going to open up the eyes of players throughout the league of how can we be more vocal in showing that we are not tied to our contract, just like teams are not tied to us. And I think you'll see more of that going forward, and I commend them for it. Like I said, I talked to T.J. McDonald about this, and he said the passion that players show in those type of situations, but we got to get our due. We got to get our pay. Owners are making billions of dollars. Teams are making a lot of money. And NFL players are one of the lowest guaranteed salaries of all the pro sports. So they need a stronger union. And I think this situation, the Bell situation, will start to lead leeway to that going forward. On a little bit of a lighter note, let's talk about some of the fun moments I saw this week. I think that this past week, a couple highlights that we saw were the Vance McDonald stiff arm that we saw a couple of weeks ago, and then we saw the Josh Allen hurdle. Those were two things that definitely caught my eye. But the funnest thing I saw this week was Andy Reid making fun of Patrick Mahomes' nickname. You don't really see that too often. You don't really see a coach making fun of his starting quarterback. But after this video, stay with me, please. But after this video, please go look up on Twitter, on YouTube, on whatever, a video of Patrick Mahomes and listen to his voice with the thought of Andy Reid impersonating him. Andy Reid, Big Red, impersonate him, and you'll get a chuckle out of it. Andy Reid described Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, voice as froggish. And it sounds like a cartoon character voice to me, too. You don't expect that type of thing. And it's sort of showing, a team that's 4-0 with the people playing extremely well can still make light of situations. And I think that's a fun part of this league, a fun part of just watching football is that you learn some of these personalities, learn some of these stories. I was talking in the locker room today to Albert Wilson, the Dolphins receiver, and he was telling me about living life in foster care. And we sort of often put these athletes in boxes, but these guys have real stories. These guys have, the ups and downs, the funs, the laughs. I was talking in the locker room with a few defensive linemen, and I was asking, hey, what are you guys' most debated topics? And he said, we always argue about colleges. Anytime that our college is playing, we argue about who's the better college, who's this, who's that. So it shows that they have arguments. They argue about MJ and LeBron just like we do. They argue about who's the best rap artist. They argue about whether Lil Wayne's Carter 5 was back or not, whether it was fired. They argue about all this stuff. So I think that that element of the game is fun for me. And that's probably, the Patrick Mahomes thing was an example that's probably the funnest thing that I saw this week. So as always, guys, you guys can shoot me questions in this question box. I have 3 more questions for people that they sent in the show that we're going to hop to, and then I'll go ahead and give you guys my predictions by X factors, and then we'll go ahead and hop out of here. So as always, follow me, subscribe to my channel on YouTube, Cameron Wolfe. You see my social media down here on the channels, Cameron Wolfe on Facebook, Cameron Wolfe on Twitter. And please like my page, share my page. I want to continue to build this Howling with the Wolf community. See, I have the Wolf Pack shirt here. It's a fun thing for me to do, but I definitely want to continue to share and give you guys this content, this exclusive content that I can provide, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So definitely share it with your community, and hopefully we can build this thing to a huge thing to where everybody knows Howling with the Wolf. So that would be super fun, and I hope that you guys can help me through this journey. Appreciate you guys continue to come back, and we'll go ahead and hop to the questions and go from there. So I talked about Joseph's questions earlier that he had asked over there. I had one question coming in. Let me see if I can get the name so I can give you a shout out for the good question. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'll go with this question first. This isn't the one I was talking about with the great question, but I'll talk about this because this relates to the NFL as a whole, even though it's a Dolphins question. Okay. Eldon Jensen is asking, is Adam Gase aware that many, and it's many, capital many, people can predict his play calling, especially after a penalty sets him back? Has he considered turning play calls over to Dow Loggins? For those who don't know, Adam Gase is the Dolphins head coach. Dow Loggins is the Dolphins offensive coordinator. This person is asking, basically calling out Adam Gase as a play caller. The number one thing that NFL fans complain about across the NFL is play calling. That's it. If you want to know what NFL fan bases, I've covered 3 NFL fan bases. I've covered the Broncos, I've covered the Titans, and I've covered the Dolphins currently. I have spent time on the Texans beat. I've covered some Rockets. I've covered all the sports, whatever. Play calling is the most universally hated thing. You can look at all 32 teams across the NFL, and one common denominator that they will have is at some point they complain about their play calling. We all like to be Monday morning quarterbacks. We all are very hesitant to criticize play calling and very hesitant to criticize referees because I know those are jobs that I can't do better. So that's typically my take on those things. I actually did ask Adam Gase about essentially about this play calling situation and how does he, not that he was going to turn it over to Dow Loggins because he would never do that. He's the offensive head coach. He's going to call plays to the end. But I essentially asked him if he was planning to look at how he calls plays, to look at the way he scripts plays and do things differently. And his response is that they self-scout every week. They look at different things. They look at their first, second down, third down plays, and they say, how can we get better? He admitted that he's got to be more balanced with running the football with both backs, with Frank Gore and with King and Drake. But the biggest thing he said is we got to have more than 45 snaps. They had 47 snaps last week. They had 44 snaps the week before. And the average across the NFL is about 60 to 65 snaps. When you don't have those snaps, when you don't have the chemistry going, the flow going, your offense, that's when things kind of blow up. They had 10 drives, 10 or 5 plays or less. All 10 of their first 10 drives with Ryan Tannehill were 10 plays or less, or 5 plays or less, and that is not good enough. It's bad, pathetic, and I think they know that, and they've got to correct that. So I don't think that there's a huge indictment over what they did. I just think they ran into a brick wall that was the Patriots. They didn't show up, and we saw that in the result. And they would, I think they would admit that they got embarrassed. So that's sort of my take on that. I think I will answer a couple more, and then we will get to the end of the show. As always, guys, if you have any other topics that I didn't talk about, feel free to talk to me. Like, this is you guys' show just as much as mine. I have my topics I come in with on the week, and I ask you guys for topics, but I just want to talk football. I love football, and I love to talk it. So if you guys have anything that you want to talk about, feel free to put it in the comment box. Feel free to send me a message throughout the week via Twitter, via Facebook Messenger, whatever, however you feel like you want to get the content out, send it to me, and we'll be able to chat these things. Chris Beta asked me, "Do you think this Dolphins team can make the playoffs?" Absolutely, they can. Will they? We'll see. We shall see. Before the season, I predicted the Dolphins to be 8-8, not a playoff team. Right at the cusp of mediocre and average. That's about 8-8, mediocre and average, right somewhere in between there. And I don't think my view has changed significantly. I didn't really get too high after the 3-0. I'm not going to get too low after the blowout to the Patriots. I think they are within 2 games, one way or the other, of 8-8. I think they either finish between 6-10 or 10-6, and I pick right in the middle, 8-8. So I think the Dolphins' route to the playoffs is simple. They got off to a strong start. They're 3-1. You look at the AFC, there's not a lot of strong teams out there in the wild card mix that intimidates you. The Patriots are a playoff team. Kansas City is probably a playoff team. Beyond that, there's nothing out there that really scares me a ton. The Steelers are struggling. The Jags are probably a playoff team, and they're playing well. But outside of that, there's 3 open spots. The Tennessee Titans are playing well, but the Dolphins already have a game in hand beating them. The Bengals are playing well, but the Dolphins play them this week with a chance to get an upper hand on a potential playoff team. The Ravens are playing well, but there's a lot of openness in the AFC, and I think that's an opportunity for a team like the Dolphins to get into the wild card mix. And when you get into the wild card mix, anything can happen. I saw the Titans make the playoffs last year, a team that not many people thought were going to be able to make noise, and they ended up doing it. You saw the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, one of the worst teams in the league this year, make the playoffs last year and end their drought. So I don't think it's out of the ordinary for you to expect the Dolphins to make the playoffs. And I'd say, there's a halfway decent chance, but they've got to play better than they did last week. And that takes me into my next question from Noah Lopez, who says, how will Miami's offense and defense overcome the lack of depth in the trenches? They will have to man up. That's simple. There's no safety valve. There's no miracle coming in. They'll have to man up. Adam Gates said they got out physical last week. Can't get out physical again. Just can't do it. And this week they're playing a team that's also banged up in our offensive line. You got to figure out how to contain Geno Atkins. Otherwise, they just got to play good football. So that's it for the questions I had, saved up. I'll go ahead and go to my predictions really quickly and the X factors, and then I'll see if you guys have any questions before I bounce out of here. Prediction, unfortunately, Dolphins fans, another loss. I've got it. Bengals winning this game. I think I have the score as 27-19 Bengals. I think the Dolphins are too banged up in the situation. You've got a team that, they are still trying to figure out how they overcome the loss of a couple of offensive linemen. They're in a situation where, they're going to have to fix a lot of this on the fly. They're going to be, down probably a guy like William Hayes is already out for the year. It doesn't look like Andre Branch is going to be back in time for this week. You're probably not going to have DeVante Parker. So you're banged up. You're going up to Cincinnati to a team that's hot. I wouldn't be shocked if they won this game, but I think for me this is a pencil loss. I pencil loss this one in for me. And quick, 3 X factors. I won't explain too much because I've already gone a little long for this show. But Geno Atkins up front for the Bengals, very big player, particularly with the interior of the offensive line. How Travis Swanson, the center, plays is going to be the most important factor in this game. How Travis Swanson, and in combination Jesse Davis and the left guard Ted Larson, handle Geno Atkins and that interior defensive line pressure is going to decide if the Dolphins win or lose this game, and that's going to be really essential. I think that Torrey McTyer is my second X factor. He's probably going to be starting on the other spot opposite Xavier Howard with Bobby McCain out this week. How does he handle the second receiver? You're probably going to see a lot of Xavier Howard on AJ Green, but how does Torrey McTyer handle Tyler Boyd, who's playing really well? And if he gets on AJ Green, can he hold his own? He played bad last week. Let's just be frank. But he's got to play better this week. Cordrea, Tankersley's probably going to get some burn. Those two are probably my second X factor. in this game. And then my final X factor in this game is probably going to be let's go with Vincent Taylor on the defensive tackle situation. We got Jordan Phillips that was dismissed earlier this week, and nobody in the Dolphins organization really wants to talk about that, but dismissed in a situation where he had a sideline tirade. He wasn't happy with playing time. He was their third or fourth defensive tackle. Now Vincent Taylor, who has been balling, has got time to show up. So he's my third X factor. A couple questions on Titans. I'll go ahead and give you some Titans love before I leave, and then we'll go ahead and bounce. Aubrey Calvin's asking what you think about Marcus' play last week, and we'll go ahead and end with this question. Marcus played extremely well. That is the best game I've seen Marcus Mariota play in his 4 years in the league. It's that simple. Played well. Corey Davis, that's the best game I've seen him play in his 2 years in this league. If you get that play for them, they are an AFC contender, and they should be reckoned with. They need consistency from Mariota, from Davis, but otherwise I'm extremely impressed with Mike Vrabel has them boys doing down there. They beat Jacksonville, they beat Houston, and now they beat the world champs, Philly. So good for the Titans, good for that team, and we'll see if both teams keep rolling. So thanks, guys. Like I said, follow, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.